In today's lecture, we are going to look at the rule of Richard the First, who is also known as the Lionheart. So, why was he called the Lionheart? What was the reference? We'll see that in the course of this lecture. Now, this is the picture, the painting to the left side, and to the right side, you can see a statue. This is Richard the Lionheart, the third son of Henry II. His time of reign was from 1189 to 1199, so 10 years. So he was the third son of Henry II. He was also called the Lionheart, that is Coeur de Lion. I hope I'm pronouncing it correct. Coeur de Lion in French. He was one of the most bravest and most adventurous of all the kings who have sat on the uh, throne of England. And why was he called the Brave Heart? Because he was totally involved in the Crusades. Crusades were the holy wars that were fought between the Christians of the West and the Muslims of the East to liberate the Holy Land, Jerusalem, from the clutches of Muslims. So, in the next class, we will be looking at Crusades in detail, and we can see uh, the different crusades that were fought and the different people who were responsible for that, right? So during this time, Jerusalem, the Holy Land, the holiest of the holies of the Christians, had fallen uh, into the clutches of Muslims, and many of the priests, preachers, and popes, even many successive popes, gave this call to the Christian believers to join this holy war to liberate the Holy Land from the Muslims. So now Richard was totally involved in the crusade. So this gave him that sobriquet or this title of being a Lionheart. And he was not really interested in running the country, and he was not a capable statesman. He was interested in fighting wars. He was very brave. So that was his forte. And for him, England was a source of generating funds for the crusades, right? Crusades could not be fought freely. You needed money, and you needed manpower, and that came from the people of England. So different kinds of taxes were imposed upon the people. So for him, as the king, England was the source of generating funds. So, in order to generate fund, he undertook many methods. So, selling bishoprics. Now, what is this bishoprics? It's nothing but the title. So, if you wanted to become a bishop, you better pay. So, you could actually pay your way and get these titles. So, if you become the bishop of a particular a particular parish or particular area, obviously you would be sitting on a lot of wealth, because the church, the whole entire area would be under you, the revenues would be with you, and the churches were all centers of wealth, a lot of wealth. So there were many who were dying to become bishops, so they were willing to pay money. So it was nothing but paying a bribe to become bishops. And great offices of state, again, if you wanted to be the leader of something, if you wanted to be the lord over something, or you wanted to be a particular minister, so all these things were for sale. It's quite dishonorable, but this is what had happened during that time. So great offices of state, church, everything was there for sale. Even claims to feudal jurisdiction, that is, if you wanted to rule over, if you wanted to be the judge over a particular area, even for that particular post, if you wanted to be, you could pay money and get into that. So everything was for sale, more or less. England was for sale. So it was given to the ones who offered the largest sums of money. So the highest bidder got these positions. So by 1190, he left for crusade with a fleet of 40 ships. Imagine the magnitude of this army. 40 ships. So this was the first English navy on the Mediterranean. Earlier, when and this was not the first crusade. Please remember that the crusades were being fought even before that. But then England got involved only with the arrival of Richard I. So before this, whoever from the western region went for the crusades, they all took the land route. They passed through the land, the different countries. They passed through the Roman. the earlier Roman Empire, they moved towards the Eastern Roman Empire, the remaining part of the Eastern Roman Empire, which is known as the Byzantine Empire, right? So they took the land route. But Richard the First was the first one to navigate and take the water route. So his navy was the first on the Mediterranean to travel and go towards the Holy Land. Now, the Holy Land of Jerusalem during his time, I mean, during this particular crusade, was ruled by this very able emperor, Muslim emperor called Saladin. So, Saladin was ruling the Holy Land of Jerusalem. He was a very wise and a courtly gentleman, and he had the support of all the people there. So, he was actually in all manner, in all ways, he was much, much better than Richard. So Richard was no match for Saladin. And Saladin was again very brave and he was very mature, which was not there in Richard, the maturity. And what happened was Richard was not really able to conquer the Holy Land. So he was able to reach only up to this place called Acre, and he couldn't make a mark anywhere else. So he was able to win over only this particular territory in the Middle East or the Holy Land, this place called Acre. But he couldn't get anywhere near Jerusalem. So and the power of Saladin was so much that he was almost defeated. Richard was almost defeated. So he was forced to arrive at a truce. Truce is kind of a peace treaty. He had to sign it. He was forced to sign it. And this treaty was signed with Saladin in 1192. So here we have the pictures of King Richard and Emperor Saladin. So you have Richard to the left and Saladin to the right. Now, Richard, in a way, he was a good man, but then he was quite headstrong, not really mature. So and the way he was taxing people in order to finance his adventurous journeys to the Holy Land was not acceptable to the people. So he was not very popular. And another reason was we'd already seen that he was quite tactless and headstrong. So he was not that very popular with the people. And he was not approved by his peers who had also undertaken the call for crusade. So this crusade was not fought only by the rulers from England. So there were rulers from Norway, France, Belgium, from these different regions. So all of them had taken upon this call to go and fight and defend the Holy Land. So there was this group of royalty, kings and emperors who were fighting the crusades. So Richard was not popular among them also, among the other Western rulers. His chief enemy was Duke Leopold of Austria, and they were always getting into fight with each other. And this Leopold of Australia, he was just waiting to teach Richard a lesson. So what happened once was, when Richard was returning to England after that truce with Saladin, he fell into the hands of Leopold and he was imprisoned. Now, Richard was freed only after making a payment of 1.5 lakh marks, that's a currency, and this was taken from the already overtaxed people of England. So just look at him. I mean, he had already spent so much fighting the Crusades. Now, even to get his release from his enemy, he had to pay a ransom. And where did he generate the ransom from? From the people of England. So they were already overtaxed. Now again they were taxed so that their king could be liberated. So you can understand how frustrated and irritated the people of England would have been with Richard. Now, Richard, he had no time to rule England because most of the time he was away. So, after his adventure with the Crusades, everything, he went off to Normandy. Now, Normandy is in France. Why? Because Normandy was under his brother Prince John, the youngest son of Henry II. If you remember, he was his favorite son, right? So now Prince John was ruling Normandy. Normandy was under him. So now Richard, he went to Normandy and he wanted to take away that land from his brother. So he went into a fight and he went to Normandy in France. So after possessing Normandy, he started troubling King Philip Augustus of France. No, he was not on friendly terms with the French king also, and one reason was Philip Augustus was supportive of Prince John and his claim to Normandy. So when he was causing trouble to his brother John, he was supported by Prince John was supported by Philip Augustus. So this was enough reason for Richard to be irritated with Philip Augustus. So he started troubling him. So there were a series of sieges and battles. He was trying to defeat him. I mean, he was very ambitious, Richard the First, and there was no peace and calm in the land because all the time there was threat of some battle or the other or some siege or the other, and he died during one of the sieges in this place called Limoges in 1199. And England was quite calm at the death of this king because he had been an absentee king most of the time, and he only wanted taxes from his people. So England did not feel really sad or sorry to see him go. Now, during his absence, because he was this absentee king, right? So during his absence, who had really ruled over England? It was Hubert Walter, the Archbishop of Canterbury. So he had taken charge of England whenever Richard traveled abroad for his crusade or for even when he had gone for his exploits in France. So Hubert Walter, he was also the justiciar of the land, and he helped England progress on the road to self government. So he was quite capable in ruling the country. So the king was not that, but this man made up for the lack of governing abilities in the king. So he granted charters of self government to many towns in receipt of money, which filled the state coffers. So we had already seen how many of the estates and many of the titles were up for sale. Likewise, many of the towns, even they could get their own autonomy and freedom in return for a tidy sum of money. So this was encouraged. So in a way, the coffers, that is uh, uh, England's coffers treasury was filled with a lot of money because many towns and cities they accepted this offer because they were happy to have that autonomy and they would pay money and get that freedom to rule and have their own representatives in the parliament. So these towns they were ruled by their elders or statesmen. They were called aldermen, and this group of aldermen were led by their chief, who is called the mayor. So you have the origin of the term mayor, the origin of this office of mayor during that particular time. So London was the first city in the world which obtained the right to elect its own administrators, and it's the first corporation in the world. We had already seen how London was a center of prolific trade and commerce. It had become self sufficient, and this was the final step of autonomy. So it had its right to elect its own administrators without the interference of the king, and it was the first municipal corporation in the world. So these are about the life and time, that is the reign of Richard the First or Richard the Lionheart. So directly he did not do much for the land. It was Hubert Walter who would actually running the show for him in his absence. So whenever we talk about Richard, we talk about him with reference to the Crusades and what he did for the faith, what he did for the church, right? Other than that, he doesn't have any claim to any kind of achievement in England.